Good morning, Kyle. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Nate. We need to address something though. It's our first
What's
episode
that?
since ARA.
Yeah, go ahead.
We got attacked.
I'm the one you call when you need a chin up or down. I'm a tin riddle man, I'm working all day, getting those stakes in the ground no matter what they say. From sunrise to the night, I make sure everything's right. Yeah, I'm a tin riddle man, I'm working all day.
We did, and I'm glad that it kept my name out of it, and that you got pinned down for that one. And I'll let you handle it from there,
I'm handling it. Don't worry.
and keep
They're
it.
gonna have something to say about this because you know we're like real tent guys, so we have to like be out on the road doing stuff. So we don't have a nice studio to record in. So this is what we have to do. But I wish we had a nice studio and we could just worry about a podcast all day. But we actually have real jobs.
Well, I'll let you take that from here, and I'll just keep watching from the outside looking in. But today we got a great episode. We got a wonderful guest to kind of dig into some nitty gritty of the industry of rental. We got Sean Hoffman, president of ARA Insurance. Sean, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, buddy.
Good to
Glad
see
to
you,
have you
Sean.
on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sean, if you could kind of give us a quick background just on how you ended up leading insurance for the rental industry.
And so I've been in the insurance industry over 20 years. Got the opportunity to join ARA Insurance about 7 years ago. Um, Immediately, like after visiting some stores and some tent companies, the people, I go back to that. Just really great people. And so I've really enjoyed meeting everybody. ARA is such a unique deal where, it's more of a community. And so everybody's kind of looking out for each other. We really grow by referrals, but it's also just nice to when I go out and people say, "Hey, have you met so and so or met so and so?" So it's really been I don't know how to describe it. It's just unique, very unique way to get into the industry.
So obviously we're going to focus on insurance today and try to educate the listeners on what they should look for. So the first thing obviously is they should be insured. What kind of policies should they have?
Okay, we're going easy. I like it. Um, and by the way, this is exciting. I'm excited for your listeners to get to hear about insurance. You'll probably, this is one of the most exciting topics that's out there. So I'm fully aware of that. Um, you know, Business insurance, general business insurance, right? So we sell four major lines. Inland marine, which is maybe one of the more important ones. That's your equipment. General liability, that's if something happens with your equipment to somebody. One of our biggest lines now is auto. Just over time has just generally become one of our largest premium lines, auto. And then the final thing we offer is property, your business buildings and things like that. I will say we also have an excess insurance policy over the top of those, but those are the main things that you should have. So those four lines and then excess.
Out of
Where
those
does workers' comp fall in that?
yeah, yeah.
So we don't ARA insurance. We have agents that represent us that can offer work comp, and we can do it. That's just not something that we specialize in or we really are going to offer. But we do have independent agents out there. Most of them do have a work comp market. If somebody really needs one, we do have a broker that we work with that can handle work comp. But that's just not in our main suite of ideas, our main bucket of ideas.
What do you think that companies are most exposed to that they don't really realize?
So the most calls I've got since I've started here, people say, "Well, I've got coverage," but what they don't have is coverage when it's off their property. You guys are willfully giving your equipment to somebody else, and really, it's probably more the equipment than the event side, but you are doing the same. So you guys are willfully parting for that equipment, and insurance isn't designed to cover that. So we have in our policies what's conversion coverage basically that says if somebody doesn't give your equipment back to you, we're going to cover that, and that's a little unique. The other one is in transit. And so we even see some rental policies where they'll cover it while it's away at a job site or but it's that transportation. You guys are also transportation companies moving your stuff all around. And so we're going to cover it when it's in between point A and point B. So those are two of the biggest things that I see when people call in, and we get a lot of phone calls, and that's the one thing that they're missing.
Okay.
So let's dive into inland marine policies because I know it's been a hot topic recently with replacement values. How does that work? What are you actually covering with your inland marine policy? Everything in your warehouse, from the computers to the printers to your inventory, or are you just covering some of your items?
So the inland marine is specifically the equipment that you're renting out. So that's the equipment that's our inland marine policy. And it's interesting. We talk about making sure, and I don't know how often you guys do this, but we really want to make sure that everything that you have, like, we're covering it so you could replace it. Lately, especially on the event side, some of our biggest losses have been fires. We've had, a couple fires in the last couple of years where it's not just the fire damage, but also the smoke damage to the linens and the tents. We want to make sure that we're covering everything in your warehouse so you can get back up and running right away. And so that's what that policy is meant to do. It's been a hot topic a little bit lately. It hasn't as much as we thought it might be. But one thing that, it's a good opportunity for, a rental store to kind of go through, not only to see that everything's insured to value, because in the last 5 years, we've seen the prices of some materials just skyrocket. But also, it's a good opportunity to go through, and is there anything that you have in your warehouse that you're not renting or that you really aren't using anymore? And that's something that's kind of come up. A lot of people just hold on to stuff a long time because they may rent it out once or twice. But when you're looking at insuring all your equipment, it's like, well, am I making money on this anymore, or is it time to part with some of that older stuff and get your value aligned to what you're actually renting?
Well, you got to save it in case there's a fire one day, so you get a new one, Sean. Come on.
Well, yeah.
What? Spoken father like son here.
You said it, not me. So that's more inside. So on the outside, then looking in, weather related, wind, rain, snow loads. What are you seeing most claims tied to in that sector?
Obviously weather is probably one of the biggest things that happens to the tent guys, right? And so it's a lot of wind, but recently it's been some snow too. We've seen some collapsing in places you wouldn't expect it in the south, and so it's a mix of both. We like to tell people, like, hey, if you have a chance, get out, get that equipment down, but obviously realistically you always can't do that. So it's the damage to the tents, Nate, but it's also the damage to what's under the tent, whether it's the personal property underneath the tent, or whether it blows into a house. So there's a little bit of mix of both of those. But yeah, tent, wind damage, and snow damage are probably the two most prolific things that are happening to our tents.
And that's covered under your inland marine policy,
Yep.
weather related?
Yeah. Now, obviously, it could tie into a general liability if it damages something else too, but a little bit of both of those.
Well, then when that happens and that tent collapses and things like that, is one of the things that you guys go out and do you make sure that it's properly installed and go through the necessary steps to make sure that that's done correctly?
Do we? No. I mean, every time, we're not inspecting every tent that's going up. No, we're relying on you guys to do that. And that kind of goes back to, making sure our members are up to code and doing the best practices, using ARA, Safe 10 Essentials, proper ballasting, staking. Those are things that, hey, what can you guys do as rental stores is making sure you're following those set instructions and doing it every time. Because we're not going out. No, we're not doing it every time there's a tent set up. Making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. We're counting on our insureds to make sure that protocols and those procedures are put in place ahead of time. That way we can go to our insurance carrier and say, hey, these guys are doing the best practices. They're doing the best in class every time.
Well,
do you see a world where we have to, obviously everyone can say they're doing it correctly. And as insurance gets more and more expensive, we need to weed out the people who aren't doing it safely and putting in all the claims and making insurance expensive for us. Do you see a world where you have like a rating? So every company has a rating, and so maybe Chattanooga Tent is a Class A company because they don't have put any claims in, and their premium is less because of that? Or is that already how the system works?
We're in that world now, right? We look at every account based on what that specific account is doing. So if Brian, if your company LNA Tents is doing one thing and Chattanooga Tents is doing another, we're looking at what kind of procedures and practices you have in place. We're looking at what kind of security, what your driver history is, but we're also looking at your claim history. So we're not, it's not a one size shotgun approach. We are looking at every individual account and looking at all the things that you do. If you have telematics in all your box trucks and driver cameras, and you're doing those things, you're going to have, those are things that are going to help you out when our underwriters are looking specifically at your account. And that's the thing that, back to the big picture of ARA Insurance and what we're different is, we want to be here as the stable insurer for all of our members. We were started in 1977, so next year is going to be is that the 50th anniversary of we're going to celebrate the big 50. And so we have to be the stable insurance carrier, because insurance companies can come in, they can write you for a couple of years and pull out. But what we'll do is we'll be here for the long haul. So we're going to try to be as competitive as we can on every quote, but we also want to make sure in 10 years, 15, 20 years, that we're still here doing the same thing. Okay. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah. So there is a way you're evaluating each company separately. It's not just a common, this is the revenue. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, and that was going to be kind of my point is, and you were jumping into it a little bit, but what is the advantage of ARA versus a regular insurance company? What is it that you guys are setting yourselves apart for and doing differently? I know you just said come in and write us for a couple of years, but just why do we want people to come to ARA Insurance instead of venturing out into the other insurance worlds?
Yeah. A few things is, number one, I think, is the coverage. Our coverage is going to be the best. It's designed literally for rental companies. It's all we do. We're not trying to write other things. We're just writing rental stores. That's number one. Number two, we're going to invest, everything we do, we invest back into ARA. So we're big supporters of whether it's the ARA show, ARA education, and different initiatives. That's probably one of the biggest differences, that our profits go back up to ARA, and we want to help the industry out. Number three, we have agents that do specifically rental. They're rental focused. They attend the state events, the local events. They're going to see other rental stores. When I started, like I said earlier, one of my first times going out was with one of our agents and visiting stores. And it was interesting to see his frontline underwriting approach and kind of going through a warehouse, and just the basic reaction was they had wire shelving throughout, and he kind of explained why you need that wire shelving and how linen should be stored, and talking about washers and dryers for tent materials, right? They just have a little bit more knowledge, and they're focused on this industry. So those are some of the main reasons. And then the biggest thing is we're just going to be here for the long haul. We don't plan on doing anything else or going anywhere. So in another 50 years, ARA Insurance will still be here insuring the rentalists, the rental members, whether it's equipment or tent. That's the plan, and that's our focus.
Of that. So moving over to the contract side, I know this is a tough one for a lot of companies. I know you guys do a lot with the contracts and things like that, but how important is it, and just for the contracts to protect us, but not only to protect us, to make sure that the signatures are done, and then, using that for the insurance process moving forward when issues happen?
Very important, right? We want to make sure, the contracts are signed. We also want to make sure, they're approved contracts with certain language in it, hold harmless. But that really gives us the ability to subrogate, which means go, in cases where we can, go after the customer and you're transferring that risk to your rental customer and taking it off yourself. In I want to talk a little more about what makes us different, and this is interesting when it comes to contracts. We had a large customer of ours that did a lot of work for a university, and you guys both maybe can speak this a little bit too, is that part of the contract said that while the tent was in the care of the university, they were responsible for it. So a large storm was coming through, and the insurance carrier said, hey, the university should have taken that tent down to prepare. Right.
Boy.
And so it was one of those things where we as ARA Insurance had to get involved, and we told the insurance company, it's like, that's the last thing you wanted to do. But in the meantime, the insurance carrier wanted to get that money back because there was a contract in place. They were going to go and hold the university responsible for $120,000 for a tent to recover the cost. And this was right before the 4th of July. So luckily we were able to get on the call, with the company and say, hey, this is not what we wanted, right? We didn't have time for our people to get up there. There was no way they could have gotten that structure down in time. It should have probably withstood the wind. But that's where ARA Insurance comes in. We can have that conversation with the carrier and talk through it and say, while that's in the contract, we want that to be in the contract. There's cases where we don't want a university taking down a very large tent during a storm. Like they're just,
and then killing somebody and then having a bigger deal.
And so it's making more risk.
And do you think that we're protecting ourselves enough from just client negligence as a whole, when it comes to just who's liable with things, from hanging things from a tent or another vendor damages a tent? Just tell us a little bit about that.
That's a good question. Yeah. You want to make sure you're doing all the right things that you're doing, right? And then trying to control it. Whether that's we're more concerned about what you guys are doing and making sure that you disclose what they shouldn't be doing. So if you're staking things correctly, you're calling before digging, the things that you guys can control, but then also properly advising them what they shouldn't be doing. I think that's the most important thing, making it clear and spelling that out. Is that, I guess, let me ask you guys, is that fairly common where people come in after the fact on your structures and modify and add things?
Well, I think we're the first ones in, last ones out every time. So it's like what we don't know is in the middle portion of that. If we're not on site during the event and things like that. But, if it's a big enough event that we stop back out and check it out to make sure that it's under control and that people don't do anything that's dumb per se and that you said don't do. And, but you can go back out and call it out. But I feel like 9 times out of 10, it's like we'll just ask for forgiveness later type thing. So they just do it. So that's where I was kind of wondering where the liability on something like that would fall. And, is that something that you need to make sure that you have in writing? And, what's something that we should always make sure that we have in writing so that things like that don't happen and try and cover ourselves? I know it's case by case and things like that, but and nothing's perfect. But is there something that we should, you think, have in writing or make sure that we do go over?
Yeah, I would just have it. I think having a good contract with all of your policies clearly in place and disclosing everything that you just said that you don't want them to do and putting that in writing and then being able to point to it. If they did something that was on that list or even something that was close to being on that list, then you could easily point and say, this was clearly in our contract. But those, at the end of the day, the rental contract is crucial for that, to transfer that. And we want to make sure that you guys are getting that every time and spelling all of that out. So we have something to go back to and point to and say, hey, this was caused because we told them, not to have a bonfire inside the tent, and let alone they did that. Extreme example, but I think the more you spell out, the better.
So this is probably a good time to bring this up. Say a production company is going to come in after us and do the lighting in the tent. Should we be getting a COI from them? And what exactly does the COI cover?
That's a great question. My initial answer is yes. And I don't know the second part. And I'd have to do a little research on that. But but yeah, I think making sure that everybody else that's in there, specifically a production company, you would want to make sure that they're covered and insured. But I'd have to find the exact language that we'd want that to say.
So we should be asking for any
Do,
this.
do you already on the when it comes to production companies or people coming in, and I know Kyle, your business is a little different because you guys are only doing tent. And Nate, I don't know as much about but Kyle, you're just doing the tent, so you've got a lot of people coming in after the
Yeah.
fact.
Well, and
to
usually we're
do.
not hiring them, so we don't even know who it is.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Now you're like,
And
"Huh, I don't wanna write that. I'll see
nine times
anymore."
out of 10, if the production team is putting stuff in there, it's usually we're working for the production team because we're traveling the country, with
Doing the
different
same.
production teams and things like that. So, well, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, Sean. So we've got this safe tenting initiative thing going on, right? And
Yep.
it's taken off, and ARA is doing a great job with it, and it's moving around, and we're doing all these trainings and everything like that. And you talked about a little bit on how cameras and safe driving and that thing, that helps with the premiums. Are we going to get to a world here, or are we in the world yet where safety is actually impacting insurance premiums, and not just safety on the roads, but safety in training programs, SOPs, certifications, or anything like that? And if I invest in better processes and safety for my crews, is that going to pay off for insurance savings later? And not just, okay, they're safe, and so they're not getting hurt type thing and workman's comp, but just you guys seeing the physical things that I'm doing to make my insurance premium cheaper.
Yeah, and I don't know if it will be if we're prepared to go to a world where it's going to be like if you do this, it's a 5% discount. If you do this, it's a 5. We're not going to go a straight dollar for dollar discount. But when we're looking at your account, and if you're doing the safe tinting and you're going to sign up for ARA Safe Driving, that overall is going to help, with your individual premium.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about ARA Insurance is we're insuring rental stores all over across the United States. And so the more people we can get doing those things, that helps everybody's premiums because we're going to be paying less losses. The premium insurance is basically taking, risk and spreading it throughout, right, the industry. And we're very unique because all of our insureds are in this industry. So if we can get everybody to do those things and everybody to be safer, in theory, that's going to lower our payments, which is going to lower the premium that we're charging to people. That's the simple answer. Then you specifically, each store that does those things versus a store that doesn't, let's say, Nate, you're doing them and Kyle's not doing them, you're going to see, a direct impact to your premium versus Kyle, who's doing whatever they're doing at LNA, right? That's the difference between those two things. The hardest thing is when somebody says, hey, I'm doing this now, can I get a discount? It's like, well, we need to see proof to do it.
Right. It's got to go out.
We need some history and we need some proof to do it.
Right. And I would love, I guess selfishly, I'm just thinking, with all this training, something that provides a little more incentive now with everything that's coming up and everything moving forward. And if you guys being specific industry insurance, I thought that would be a really cool thing to see for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. No, and so obviously we want to see it be successful. We want it to see it grow because it is going to impact everybody. With our insurance, like over the last couple of years, we have seen obviously with the cost of equipment and just how much everything now is the price for you guys to buy is also the price for us to replace. Mm-hmm. And so anything we can do to help control that moving forward and limit those premiums, that'd be better for all of us.
Absolutely.
In this new world of social media, are insurance carriers looking at our profiles? They should be.
So I'm going to use this in a past. I'm not going to throw anybody here under the bus, right? I'm going to use a past experience. I was working at a company and they, it was all contractors insurance. And so one of the things that on the website was, hey, we can do pools. And they were just a general contractor. And the carrier said, yeah, we're not going to write this guy because he does pools. He's like, oh, I just throw that on my website because, I probably could do that. It's like, yeah, they're looking at everything. I mean, why would you put that on there? And so, yeah, I would say just stick to the stuff that you do and don't put other things on there. And then also, make sure you're doing everything with your best practices, putting your best foot forward, because I think any information that is out there is public information. The other thing I cringe every time I see is, every time there's a Facebook post with a bounce house blowing away or a tent blowing away, it's, just, I get it that it gets some views, but like on the insurance side, number one, my first thought is, A, is that mine? Are we insuring that? But B, please don't let please don't let the insurance company see those things, because they are rare. And typically they're not, somebody that we're insuring. It's a smaller outfit, but those types of
Probably
things.
doesn't have insurance.
Probably, right? But those are the kind of thing that they cast a light on everything. But I think, I think in this world, everything out in the social media website, everything is reviewable. Even to the level of, I've heard that some carriers will look at Yelp reviews of companies, and they can find out through the Yelp review or the Google review of, some kind of the practices the company is using. Probably not so much in this industry, but it could be in the restaurant industry where they talk about some of the practices. But everything out on the internet and in social media can all be used for underwriting purposes. Everybody's looking at everything. Kind of like when you're trying to find a job, same thing, right? Everything. That's what I tell my kids. Everything is permanent now.
Everything can and will be used against you.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
In the court of law.
Yeah. Well, so we live in a world now where I feel like there's a lot of subcontracted labor out there, and a lot of these companies are using subcontracted labor. Tell me or give me a little insight on, if a subcontractor goes out and gets injured on your job site, is working for you, or any kind of liability, if that subcontractor is working for you at any site and something happens, is that gonna fall back on you as the company that hired them, or would that then go to the subcontractor insurance, and it falls on them?
So I'll be totally honest. That's the work comp. That's more of the work comp line. Thankfully, we don't deal with that. So I'll probably just stay away from answering that.
I feel like there could be quite a bit there.
Yeah. A lot.
On the subcontractor thing, though, if the subcontractor is installing my equipment for me, if something happens and they don't install it correctly, that's still coming back on me.
So at some point, I feel like you have to have one of your guys that work for you that's an actual employee go out and check off the job and make sure that everything looks correct.
Yep. Yeah. And that goes back to making sure they're following your procedures and your policies that are in place.
Yeah, which is really, really tough. It feels like these days with all this subcontracted labor and people traveling all over the U.S., it feels like, you don't know what they're getting from that. But if you could give one piece of advice just to every tent rental company or owner out there on the insurance and just what they need, whether they're insured, uninsured, looking for new policies, anything like that, what would you give to them?
Make sure you're covered. Make sure you're covered for what you have. That's probably the biggest thing, and making sure it's covered all the time, like we've talked about, whether it's in the warehouse or out on rent. I think if the worst case scenario happened to you, making sure that you could get up and start your business, in a week or 2 weeks with everything you had. We've had cases where that's happened, where people have lost everything and they've been able to get back up, in a week or two, or whether it's even 3. And that's with ARA Insurance. That's with ARA, because ARA also has brands and different things, but also ARA Insurance gets you back. And so, if you're a company and you're running a business, just making sure that every night when you go to bed that you are going to be able to keep operating your business for the foreseeable future. And if you're with an insurance company that can do that, that's great. But I can tell you ARA Insurance would be able to do the same. So that's probably the most important thing.
And if I called you tomorrow and said, review my company, what would be the first 3 things that you'd look at?
If you called me tomorrow, I would connect you with an independent insurance agent. And you're in Nashville. We got a great guy in Rome, Georgia, who covers that area, and he'd probably give you more than 3. But that'd be the first thing he would do. And I think number one is making sure that you've got the right coverage. right? And making sure you've got the dollar amount, but also the right. Is there any holes in your current policy that are leaving you open for a possible loss? Whether let's just use something we've already talked about, whether it's just in transit, or how is it? What's the value? Is it insured? I think that would probably be the biggest thing. Is there any holes in your current policy that are leaving you open to something that we could cover?
So you keep bringing up the value of inventory.
I
That's
don't
a
bring it up. You started it, Kyle. I just was.
Well, that's such a hard topic because if you bought a structure in 2010, the price of it in 2010 to today is obviously much different. So should we be adjusting our inventory value based on today's rates of what it would cost us to buy? Because obviously the structure didn't cost us, we'll just use round numbers. 2010 we paid 100,000. Well, today we might pay 400.
Yeah. No, I think we want to look at the acquisition cost, right? What's the value of it versus?
I feel like valuing your inventory is the hardest part.
Agreed. Yeah, especially in your world, right? Especially in your world, I think it's a little easier on the equipment side of the world, but in your world, it's probably a little harder to do.
Oh, it's just because a lot of it, structure can hang around forever. And how old that structure is and being able to say what it is versus like what you're saying with an evaluation now, Kyle, it's just totally different. I mean, your company could be worth triple based on what the inventory of today is versus, how old that structure is.
Yeah, a skid steer is a skid steer, but you can find that price online.
Right.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
if you I guess if you weren't evaluating, well, go ahead. I'm not even going to go there.
What is the worst claim you've seen?
The worst?
Yeah.
Dollar wise or
we'll do dollar wise.
Dollar wise, we've had 3 fires in the last couple of years, so they're all 3 are pretty bad. One we think was due to an overloaded electrical outlet. One was being used where people were refinishing tables and the rags combusted in a bucket. That was a bad one. And then the final one was the extension cord was used just every day, as a permanent plug. So overheated. Those are the 3, identified causes that we think. And so all 3 of them are just kind of like, I think all 3 of those could have probably been avoided, right? And so if you that goes back to Nate, your question earlier, like what can we do to control our premiums? Like we'll just, do the right things and try to make sure everything is operating the proper way. And so those are kind of 3 things. There's kind of a random one that happened where a tent blew over and there was a homeless guy underneath the tent and that got hurt. And you're like, well, that's just really bad luck. And so then it's a matter of like, what's the jurisdiction of the city that it's in?
Should have
and
been
that's
blocked
just
off, should it not?
Yeah, and it's like, how can you control some of those things, right? So that's more just.
I've heard that story, Sean. That is the full story on that one is one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
Yeah. So that's more bad luck. But so we try to prevent the preventables, right? So what are we doing at ARA Insurance to do that? We're sending out these loss surveys where we come out and kind of do an inspection, and we're kind of doubling down on the fire part of it now, because if we can just prevent one of those multi-million-dollar fires, it's good for us, but it's also really good for the industry, right? We don't want anybody to have to go through that. While it's all paid for, it's got to be an incredibly stressful time as you're trying to find new locations and run your business and build a new building. So that's one thing we're really focusing on in 2026 is trying to do what we can for fire prevention and
help prevent
the
already preventable stuff that could have been handled.
Which affects everyone.
And you guys both talked about what's it back in the warehouse, how many millions of dollars, no matter what size you are, but it's super disruptive, obviously, for the business and stressful. So we'll try to prevent a couple of those.
Let's talk deductibles for a second. Do you feel in our industry, since everything is most items are expensive, right? Is it better to have a high deductible because you're not going to put in the small claims?
Yeah, I think, that's a personal store by store decision, obviously, but I think that, in general, yeah, a higher deductible and keeping off those small claims. This is a personal opinion. Like insurance is for the big ones, right? Like that's how my personal thing is. That saying, if you want to turn in smaller claims, we will pay those as well. But we really want to protect you from the major losses as well. So there is a little bit of premium relief when you raise your deductible, but at the end of the day, it's got to be what's best for your business. That's something with us, you can talk to us. We can do all kinds of different deductibles on different lines. So we've got that ability to change that over time.
Got it. Sean, have you always wanted to do insurance?
Always.
Is this something you've always wanted to do? And if you didn't, what would you do besides this? Is there something else? Because I feel like I stress out every day over tents blowing down and things, but I can only imagine you getting those phone calls and you're like, oh wow, this is a new one, or just all those different stories.
So growing up, I wanted to get into sports broadcasting, and so like getting on this podcast kind of I feel like completes that goal of mine.
We checked that box for
my
you, baby.
bucket.
I'm
Like
glad.
take this off the bucket list. But I did the sports thing for a little bit, radio, TV, and newspaper, and then I quickly realized that that wasn't everything I thought it would be, and I got in, like I said, in early 2000s, got in the insurance industry, and just started having the ability to, while it's not the most exciting thing, it is something that like everybody does, everybody has, and it can actually, in many cases, help people. And so started doing that where it solves a problem for people. And so I think that's why I like it, because, we all just are, relationships, right? So having these relationships and meeting people and being able to actually help solve some problems, that's why I kind of fell into it. But if I did it all again, after meeting some, rental people, you guys look like you're having way too much fun. I don't. Now I don't know if I'd go on the equipment side or the event side. I think I'd be more on the equipment side. No offense to the listeners here, um, especially after seeing some of the weekend stuff, But it's yeah. I think I have no regrets. I like I said, 20 plus years in insurance. That's not ever what I thought I'd be doing when I was a kid. I didn't always just dream to be in insurance, but it's
I've
been a
dreamed
great
of being a
career.
tank guy my whole life.
As
That's
I was gonna
just what I
say, yeah.
dreamed of.
Kyle, you probably woke up and like as a baby, just like there was no choice, right? You were
He
10
came out of the
boy.
he came out of the hospital wrapped
Sledgehammer
in
in
vinyl.
hand. Yeah.
Yeah, wrapped in vinyl as soon as he walked out of the hospital.
One thing we haven't touched on, Nate, is auto. And why is auto insurance getting so expensive? And it's nationwide. I think it's happening everywhere. Is some of it because the world is so litigious now?
100. Great. Thank you.
That's a
Thank you,
big
Kyle.
word for you, Kyle. Good
Thank
word.
you, Kyle.
All right.
Is this one of those podcasts where the words are on the bottom too, so I can read how to spell that? So make sure
Yeah, I want him to go back and spell that.
spell that. You know, auto's tough. Auto's tough. Whether it's for personal, I've got two teenage drivers, so I feel this pain personally. Obviously, here on this side, I see it. I see it all the time. It's the litigious nature. To your point, Kyle, you can't drive down. You can't drive down highways in Kansas City without seeing billboards for attorneys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that piece of it, and then there's just the cost. A wreck now, when you have these new cars, the average price of a new car is just skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a storm of those two things where anytime there's an accident, you're looking at like just a significant repair where it wasn't that way before. So I think those two things are the big drivers of that. So what can we do about it is, it's the telematics and those things. It's the driver education, giving as much driver training, having phones free policies, different type of thing. My insurance carrier did the tracking. I don't know if you guys have seen this, where you do some type of tracking for 90 days
Yeah.
to see what you do,
Yeah.
and it measures like 4 things, and whether it's phone free driving, acceleration, braking, and kind of going through that process. It was a little eye opening to me to kind of even see my driving habits, and how lax you kind of get over time with some of the things that you do. And so I think that's one of the things for when we talk about insurance, is the auto is, it just keeps going up, right?
Yeah.
And so we're doing as much as we can to kind of help that process. All the things we mentioned, driver training and safety programs. That's a tough one.
It's so you write all our insurance except for our auto, and we just got hit with a huge increase. And when we asked why, their response was, well, you go into Philadelphia and New York City. So they want to charge you extra for being in these cities, because they're saying that's where all the claims are happening. And it's funny because most of our auto claims were in the cities because people are just jerks. But
It's people around you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not you. It's people around you.
Great. I mean, that's a great point. Yeah, it's not just you. It's the environment, right? It's
Yeah.
where you're at and how many people. But yeah, that's everywhere you go, right?
people texting all day.
Texting and driving. So are you a beer or a bourbon guy after all these claims after a long day?
Can I a little bit of both?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I'd be dabbling, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's Monday morning is when we get the weekly claim report, like for the previous week. And so it's
Yeah.
it's a little early to do anything on a Monday morning, but it is, you kind of go through and see what's happened, and knock on wood, it's been pretty smooth lately. No major disasters. We didn't have any hurricanes last year, no wildfire, no major storms, which is it's been a minute. Like I said, let's knock on wood before that. But yeah, I've been known to have a bourbon or beer from time to time. So
I love that.
Oh,
Well, Sean, I appreciate you coming on today and just in outlining a lot of this for us and giving our listeners kind of a little bit more insight, exactly what you do and why it's more beneficial to use ARA Insurance and stay within the industry here. But I'd also like to get you back on later, just going back a little bit to the safe tenning, and just to see, maybe next year after everything rolls out this year, and just kind of see if you see any premium changes through the process of this safe tenning and everything else that we're launching on our side, and if you feel like it's really been beneficial to help push that and to try and get more people involved as well.
yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me on. I would say, if anybody out there has any questions about ARA Insurance, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd love to talk to them and share more information.
And Sean, where can we find you so they can get a hold of you?
ARAinsure.com is probably the best way. Our phone number is right on there. Just call, ask for me. But on our website, there's also
ask for you direct. Look
yeah,
at
that's
that.
fine. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's what I'm here for, man. I'm here for the people.
I love that.
But
Man of the people.
but we'll talk insurance. We'll talk Kyle. We can talk all these things.
Well, I feel like that's an insurance claim in itself, so we'll just drop
Yeah.
that right there and move on. But this has been another episode of Under the Vinyl, a rental management media podcast.